As I said before, as a manager, it's not just your team and your boss that you should be interacting with or understanding or speaking to, right? Essentially is coordinating with the other managers and their teams, right? Because what I see is a lot of the time, and it's not good for performance, is that like the manager understands their role in however way they understand their role. They get their kind of instructions, let's say, from the boss, and then they go off and they manage their teams. Yeah, and then all the managers do that. And that doesn't really work, right? Because there's no interconnection. And the objective is, and a lot of managers that are managing the different layers don't understand this, so they don't coordinate between their own managers, right? And you have sometimes coordination meetings that basically are day-to-day stuff, right? And they're not real coordination. So the first important thing is when you're talking about the other managers or the other players, let's say, whether they're supervisors, managers, it doesn't matter what level they're on, that are managing other teams to the common goal. It's to understand who they are and how they're articulating their role, right? Because no two people will do the same job or the same role in the same ways. National staff know this very well because they have to continually adapt to different ways of doing of the same role, different articulations of every international staff that comes over and articulates the same role in a completely different way, right? So it's important to understand the roles and how they're being articulated by the different people in the people that affect what you and your team does and vice versa. Yeah. So you need to have regular bilaterals with other managers, right? Sometimes what's weird is that project coordinators don't like this, no, or the bosses of many managers don't like when their managers meet, which is ludicrous, right? Because you have to, because if you're talking about a field project base, for example, where you have several projects running, and you have logistics, you have administration, you have the program people, you have that all together. It all needs to be working, as I said before, like a well-oiled machine. And with every manager operating as if they were kind of in a vacuum by themselves, that doesn't work. That doesn't work at all, right? So I need to understand, first of all, my own role and the role of my team, but I also need to understand the role of the other managers and their teams and each member of their team. And nobody that I've seen really takes the time to understand this. Yeah, and then you need to, in these meetings, right, that you're building relationships with the other managers, you're understanding their challenges and their priorities, yeah, and you're being generous as well with your time and with your team. You're not being territorial, yeah, and you're helping to ensure that all of the teams are working towards the same goal, right? It's so common that logistics is working on X number of priorities, the administration is doing some other priority, and the program teams are all working to different priorities or overwhelmed by the day-to-day. Yeah. So if the coordinator isn't doing this, i.e. the person who's supposed to be managing all of these layers, then you need to do it. But even if he or she is doing it, you still need to do it, because building relationship and getting visibility and building how teams interwork, right? So we're talking about interdepartmental coordination, inter-team coordination, intermanagerial coordination, right? I need to understand the functions and the roles of each of the components, let's say, that are all supposedly trying to do the same thing, right? So I need to make sure that I have the big picture, and then I need to make sure that I understand how every other manager is articulating their part of that big picture. And if I don't know that, it's very difficult to align. And we'll talk a little bit about alignment in a minute. You as a manager need to make sure that your team is working to the right priorities, not your priorities, the global priorities, right? And that requires coordination with other managers. I mean, it should be obvious, but unfortunately it isn't. So your job isn't to just like plan a load of activities and have a chronogram and make sure that your team are doing these activities in a vacuum without knowing what the others are doing. No, it's to plan together. And that's the problem of most projects or teams, multidisciplinary teams, is that they don't do this. Logistics does its own thing, admin does its own thing, and then you have a load of demands for information coming down from above. Again, your role is to understand the big picture, understand what other managers are doing, and understand how it's all going to work together to achieve the same thing at the same time. You need to understand priorities at different levels of priorities. You need to be able to operationalize them, the ones that fall to you smoothly. You need to anticipate problems, and you need to build resolution capacity into your prioritization. That's your role as a manager. It's not to just plan blindly alone and give instructions to your team. But your most important role is the part ensuring that you and your team or your department or whatever are contributing in a useful way to the program and not being a problem, as I said before, in getting in the way and putting more obstacles than there already are in humanitarian work, right? So you need to be working to eliminate with other managers any obstacles are hindering that. And you need to manage your own ego, and you will need to manage the ego of everybody else because everybody has one. How big or small it is depends on the person, but you need to identify that and manage it. Your team and your role has been designed in theory to accomplish a key part of the goal. So you need to understand what that is and how that works together. I've heard and been involved in many discussions about which roles and which people are strategical and which not. And, it's just a waste of time, right? It doesn't matter. You can't designate. Of course, there are certain roles that are obviously going to be more strategical, but strategy can be as small or as big as anything, right? But everybody needs a strategy. Every single body managing needs a managerial strategy and tactics to articulate and implement and execute. So discussing about which roles are strategic or which roles aren't is just like, it makes no sense, right? Because it's thinking that's strategical and then you have your execution. So I would not worry about that. As a manager, you need to have a managerial strategy to get your whatever you have to get done in the best way possible, right? And then you will have tactical aspects in terms of how to surmount or get over or resolve different problems. And they're two different things, right? But it has to be adaptive, yeah? As I said, not working properly together is the biggest challenge in any managerial environment. Treating teams as if they're mini dynasties or mini territorial entities, yeah, that is what gets in the way. People talking about my this, my that, my doctor, my logistician. No. Knowing what people are doing with their time is key, yeah, on your team and other managers. That's not micromanagement, right? That's knowing what people are doing, knowing people's workloads, knowing people's priorities, and directing what they're doing and their priorities. Telling people what and how to do things on a minor scale is micromanagement, right? So we need to understand the difference between micromanagement and understanding what my team is prioritizing and how they're doing things, yeah? And if you're not already managing by objectives, then how are you managing? I hope you are not managing by tasks or instructions, because that won't work. Managing, getting up in the morning and having a team meeting and giving out a load of tasks or instructions to your team without them understanding the big picture is poor management. Your team needs to understand the big picture as well, right? If not, they're just executing tasks and they don't get any they can't give any feedback on how things are going. Yeah. So work with other people on the big picture transmit and communicate clearly to your teams the big picture, right? Communicate to your team the priorities of the other departments, the challenges of the other departments, and how you can work together better. Look always for ways to work better together, not get in the way. Yeah. So the most important thing you can do is to, as a manager, is apart from all of that, which is not a small thing, is to build your team to be strong, adaptive, and effective by leading it properly, by communicating. A lot of managers, for some weird reason, think it's a secret, no? What the priorities are. They don't tell their teams, right? It's like those priorities should only be discussed in the coordination meetings amongst managers. No, if all the teams don't know what we're doing, how possibly can they work better? So stop doing that if you're doing it, and communicate more transparently, and build strong, adaptive, effective teams. Yeah, but most of your big work isn't with your own team, contrary to what people think. It's managing this other layer of other managers, other supervisors, other teams, other entities, other support functions, and your hierarchy, and all of the people working above you as well, right? That's going to be something that's very important. And as I said, alignment. Alignment is very misunderstood and yet so important. And I will talk about alignment in the next video. Thank you.